Good afternoon. I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, and this is our weekly show, Lead Your Movement, where we talk to entrepreneurs and business leaders who are using their platforms in order to make a big dent in the world. And today we have a phenomenal guest for you. Really, I think could not be sort of better timing to talk about what we're talking about today, just with all the things that are happening in the world. And I just want to remind all of you that we are live today. So you're definitely going to want to take advantage of being able to ask questions and sharing your comments with all of us. But of course, even if you are watching this episode after it has aired live, especially if you're over on places like YouTube, please do leave us a comment in the comment section and make sure that you're subscribing to our channel so that each week you get notified when we have another amazing guest on. So today we're talking all about increasing your consciousness and your capacity to feel fulfillment. And when we think about where we are in this year, 2020, and the 11th month now of a very challenging year, and with all the things that are happening in the world, and we look at how we overcome some of the challenges that we're going up against, really where we have to go is to universal law. Where we have to go is to connecting in with the universe, and the key principles that keep us focused and keep us in alignment with our purpose for being on this planet right now, because we've all chosen to be here, right? So, my guest today is someone who I've had the absolute pleasure of knowing for about 8 or 9 years now, someone who I admire very much, and who I watch, week after week, month after month, year after year, impacting people's lives in absolutely transformational ways. Our guest today is Chris Yonker, a father, husband, martial artist, and world leading mentor for high achievers. As a seventh degree black belt, neuro linguistic programming practitioner, and thought leader on personal performance, who has over 20 years of experience working at the global brand 3M, leading teams responsible for over 9 figures in sales. Chris has created a signature methodology that assists high achievers in expanding their consciousness and capacity for fulfillment. His work helps clients move beyond the illusions that are hindering their fulfillment and allows them to take quantum leaps in their transformation. Chris, it is an absolute honor and pleasure, my friend, to welcome you to the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me here. So I'm honored to be here. Our relationship is very special to me, and I appreciate all that you've done to help me, and I truly value our friendship. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Chris. I feel the same way. And, one of the things whenever I'm spending time with you is just this reminder to stay focused on what's really important, the importance of staying focused on truth. So, with that in mind, let me ask you the question I like to ask all of my guests at the top of the show. And that is, what is the movement that you are leading in the world?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I am also a high achiever like yourself, and much of I think our market of working with business owners, right, business leaders, those folks are typically high achievers. And what I found from my life experience and working with folks like myself is that we're constantly chasing after the next thing, and the true peace. I believe life is short. We should have joy, peace, happiness, and fulfillment. Like this is, we're on a ride. We don't know how long the ride is. It's a journey. We know for certain, here's the truth, it's going to end, right? We're going to, at some point, we're going to go somewhere else, where that is. So how do you want that experience to be? Right? How do you want the experience to be? How do you want to exist the time that you're here? And my work is helping people wake up to that as a reality. And then secondly, become the person who can do something about it.
People live their lives these days moving a million miles an hour and having input from the nonstop media, nonstop social media, nonstop connection to digital devices,
Yeah.
nonstop demands on their time, expectations being set by others telling us, what we should want, what we should look like, what we should do, how many activities our kids should be in, all of those things. And I think that really got exacerbated this year. But you somehow through all of that help people cut through that, Chris, and think about what they actually want out of life, as opposed to just being along for the ride. Like you're on a roller coaster, someone else is controlling it in the control booth and you have no control over it,
Right.
versus coming down. Talk a little bit about the
Yeah.
importance of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of, so the best-selling author was introduced to me, and she'd done pretty well for a period of time. They lived on an island in the Caribbean, and then they moved to beautiful, amazing property, and had, a lot of people would say you check a lot of boxes on all that they had, her and a significant other had. And the fact of the matter is, she was not happy, distraught. It was impacting her writing. So someone that knew me connected us, and so I said, what's it? What's your goal? Like, what's us all for? And you think achievers love that question. What's your goal? Like, what do you want to accomplish? Right? Oh my God, yes, I got a list right here. I'm going to write it down. And so we would love coming up with goals because we're goal driven, right? So we can check them off. So needless to say, she said, well, I want a plane, and I want a private plane. I want this. And I said, okay, great. You want this private plane, and okay, why do you want it? Like, what's the why, right? And then Simon Sinek, start with why. And so her why was, well, I want to prove to everyone that I made it, and that look at me and blah 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 blah. And I said, okay, so you don't have a lot of, how much peace and fulfillment do you have right now? That we know the levels are low. It's like, as an achiever, you've wired yourself to achieve things a certain way, leveraging this. And a lot of coaches would plug into that. They go, look, okay, where's the lever? Pain, right? Okay, let's move away from pain. Let's move towards pleasure, and let's lever that so you can break through over and over and over and over again, and have that success and override what's really going on. And I decided, like, I learned that model. It works very well. The fact of the matter is, you still don't ever have total peace and joy and fulfillment. And quite frankly, what I found is it leads to more stress. It leads to higher blood pressure. It leads to this point where you can't even, I mean, I talked to somebody that did who owns a business, and I'm like, I was talking about meditation, which is something we'll probably talk about a little bit today. And I said, well, have you considered in meditation or yoga or something? Oh, no. I can't do that. I can't do that because that's a waste of my time. And also, I can't, I said, I may finish your sentence. You can't shut your mind down, can you? And she's like, no, I can't. It's always running. And why would I want it to stop? I'm like, because it's running your world right now. That's why. You don't have full peace and happiness. You don't have what you would label as a level of balance. And the fact of the matter is that something's going to have to change. Something is going to have to change somewhere if you want that thing. And so for the achievers are out there, typically there's 3 reasons we start a business, usually one of 3, or all, could be all. One is I want to have power and authority. Second one is I want to win. I want to win. I've come across that one a lot. I want to win. I'm a winner. And if I can't win, then I'm not going to bother playing. And then the third one is I want to be known. I want to be in a pool of association. And the fact with all of these 3, if you listen to them all, every single one of them is tied to ego. And they're also tied to an external experience that has to occur in order for us to have a feeling. And if you want to be happy, you can never tie a condition, what happens externally that you cannot control, how you get to feel. And most people run their lives that way.
And I would say that's exacerbated today,
Yeah.
because when you're running a business, it's very difficult to not be plugged in to what's happening in the news, things on social media, right? I mean, it is how our world goes about operating. And in fact, because of the pandemic and because we can't connect in person the way that we once did, even those who sort of refrained from some of those sort of online places have to go there now, because that is the mechanisms by which we're able to stay connected to one another.
Yeah.
And so we're just constantly, I mean, Chris, I was having this very conversation with a client of mine about 2 weeks ago, and she was talking about this idea that she always feels behind, and this idea that she could somehow catch up to what she sees everyone else doing. But that's really just a mirage in the desert. Like, we can't uh there is no winning if we try to win from that. Can you talk a little bit
Right.
about that in terms of that mirage of that idea? Because I feel like most people, every time they set a goal and they accomplish the goal, they have a sense of fulfillment for
Yeah.
maybe a nanosecond. But
Yeah.
what we often see in our community, Chris, is that they then start discounting that success. They start saying, well, yeah, but it wasn't as good as this person's success. And I don't have
Right.
these other 100 things done. So we just had
Yeah.
this awesome thing happen, but there's another 100 things we've never done.
Yeah, I think there's a couple sides to that. One is, like, we are in the social media world, and how often do I to me is a good way to stay connected with people, family, friends, people that are just people that there's that input for us that we're trying to, like, well, soon, then we start making statements like, well, as soon as I have this, then I'll be happy. As soon as I redo my kitchen, I'll be happy. As soon as I move to here, X, Y, and Z, I'll be happy. And we create these conditions. And it's not saying that we shouldn't pursue what we want. I think part of the challenge is, and you and I have talked about this before, I think part of the challenge is that we like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want to give up my drive, like, because my drive got to me where I am. That's very scary to me. And it's not, the drive isn't going to be given up. We're just looking to redirect it. We don't want to take away. I'm not someone that sits at home and doesn't do anything. I'm very active. But the fact of the matter is, it's the level of consciousness that I hold to how I'm being active. And I know you've read this book by Hawkins called Power versus Force. Recommend it to anyone out there. And it's a bit heady, but there's in it there's a, I'll hold it up and I don't expect people to read it, but there's this chart, and it basically runs through the energy associated with and you can say, well, what do you mean by that? Like, well, look at it, just think about the emotional context you're in. You say, well, you care, how do you have any stress right now? Yes. Where's the stress coming from? It's probably coming from fear. A lot of people with some level of fear, right? There's uncertainty. We do, as human beings, it's interesting. We don't do well with certainty, but we do well with certainty once we get through the certainty and create another experience for ourselves from having it. And this year, on that topic, quite frankly, and people, and this is really important to understand, this year is an amazing year to create a higher level of consciousness. And I'll talk what I mean by that. And also a higher level of resilience. We can take this experience we're having and come out better because of it. As painful as it might be, it doesn't mean that we have to struggle through it. I mean, as you know, because you know me personally, my father-in-law passed away in February. My own father passed away last month. Those were not expected, either one of those passing. So we've lost two parents this year, plus the impact of COVID to some of our business. So, like, there's a lot there, right there, let alone whatever else that we're dealing with and the craziness. So, but it doesn't take away from saying, okay, well, how do I want to show up today? Do I want to have fear? Do I want to be angry? I mean, I was talking to a CEO this morning who was pissed off. He wanted control of a situation he didn't have control of. And I'm like, how long? And I think is the other thing to keep in mind is, like, once we figure out how to at least get centered, we're human beings. We're gonna lose our crap or lose our shit from time to time. I lose my shit from time to time, but that's okay. It's, what do we do with a window? Like, okay, I lose my shit, and then how do I recover? Like, there's a window of time for recovery. And the more mastery you build, I believe, in your life, the shorter you can create that, you can narrow that window down. And that's the goal. The goal is just to narrow the window of when we lose balance. Like a martial artist, you lose balance all the time. It's like, how fast can I help you recenter? How fast can I get you to recover? Once I teach you how to have some balance, we're not going to train not to lose it anymore. We're going to train to keep to close the window down and recover and recover. And recovery is really, really important. In fact, recovery is a theme. I'd ask people out there right now, what is your recovery ritual? Do you have one? Is it doing more shit? Is it like, why can't, what is the recovery ritual? I mean, you're very familiar with the Jim Lower, the Energy Project, the work that they've done. And I mean, he's documented that if you build in recovery time, you actually can get a lot more done than if you don't. But yet, high achievers have a hard time with that because typically they feel guilty because they should be doing more. Another story. There's so many damn stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think too, it's that drive. Well, we did that, but there's more to do. So let's just get back to more, more. Um, let's talk a little bit about resilience because that recovery piece is part of resilience, but there's more to it. And that word, by the way, is getting thrown around. There's certain words this year that are being thrown around a lot, Chris.
Yeah.
Legacy is being thrown around a lot. Resilience is being thrown around a lot this year. Can we talk a little bit about what resilience is
Yeah.
and isn't?
Yeah, it's a good point. So if you look at what resilience is, it's people look and go like, well, it means I just have to overcome. I have to pursue and I have to push through. And that's oftentimes the paradigm associated with it, right? So we use learns in the human language all the time. And it's like when Daniel Goleman did emotional intelligence, he talked about, this is how you have emotional intelligence and you need to list to communicate and talk about really what to do. Basically, this is what you do. But as you're asking a deeper question. It's how do you do that? How do you unpack it? How do you unpack resilience? And in essence, I think there's a few things we have to understand. The first piece is that what we don't, if we're in resistance, which comes with resilience, like you're in resistance to something, that means there has to be an opposition physically, right? There has to be an opposition somewhere. There's something that's pushing back. Well, it's not pushing back. You just don't like what it is. You just don't like what it is. I don't like my dad passed away. I don't like what it is. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't change any part of it. It's the context of how do I manage that, right? So one is that for me, it's like, okay, well, I have to accept it and emote through it as well, not bury it down. High achievers are good at that, or keep our emotions out here. It's process whatever needs to be processed, journal it, and be grateful for wherever I'm at. Gratitude's pretty important. And that's one piece. The other piece is that when we're building resilience, we also need to understand is that there's something I don't like. By saying, okay, doesn't mean I have to accept it, but I have to accept the reality of what it is and know that I can control and how I decide what it means to me, which is really important. How I decide what it means to me is another key element. What does it mean to me? Well, to me, it means, okay, well, it's a reminder. Life's short. It's a reminder that it's a gift. It's a reminder that I'm going to be on purpose, and everything that I'm going to do, I'm going to do it. Maybe at some point, maybe sometimes I might dedicate some energy to that idea. And so often we do things that just are not in our own best interest because we're concerned about other people, as you kind of mentioned earlier. And if we're building resilience, we want to do what's best for us. So A, recovery ritual. B, stay on purpose. Your purpose and your values shouldn't change based upon the context of what's going on. Unlike a lot of people, I didn't check the news this morning because do I care? Yes, but it wasn't going to impact my daughter having her birthday today, spending a few minutes with her, practicing yoga, all the things I normally do. It's it's not going to have an impact on that. My purpose, being here today, being my best, the purpose, the things I'm on my mission doesn't change. It doesn't change. And what happens with people when we're building resilience is that something somewhere in our life gets thrown off. And then we let it impact the other parts. If we have 5 swim lanes and then one lane gets jacked up, well, then all of a sudden we shut down. And then we start saying things like, well, I just need to regroup. Regroup what? What's that mean? I don't even know what regroup means. Like, oh, I need to regroup. Like, well, no, that means I'm going to go back through my damn rut again. To me, typically, that's been my experience with people that use that language, right? And so, and you say, well, okay, well, all right, got it. So I also understand that, and when we're building resilience, we need to deal with the facts, which is really hard today. I know, because it's hard to get them, right? So like I have a good friend who is a respiratory and immunology doctor, and he is very well schooled. He's very well connected and internationally. And I will trust what he had COVID. His wife almost died of COVID, which I know he wouldn't mind me saying. And he got her on a trial, and she pulled through, and he helped her rehab. Well, the point is, like, I would trust his input over someone else's on his experience, just because I trust him, right? So I think often we got to pay attention to what we're allowing in, and how we're navigating through that, because what we're building resilience to is our external reality. And here's the biggest mind blow, is that it's all a fabrication anyway. It's all a fabrication. We just don't like what we're witnessing through our senses. And so we're creating friction to it. Because if we liked it, we wouldn't be in resistance to it, and we wouldn't have to build any resilience. Isn't it bizarre? So there has to be some level of friction, but understand that friction doesn't mean I have to push through it. I want to understand it, accept the reality of the situation, and know that I can control how I think. I can control my beliefs, and also I can control how I feel. I can control how I feel, because emotions don't come out of anywhere. They don't just come out of thin air. We generate those emotions. And I think a lot of people also need to realize too, I was talking about this to another person the other day, is tension is contagious. And there's a lot of tension around us right now. Tension is contagious. So creating tension is an unconscious process. Relaxation is a conscious process. So that's a tip for everybody. Well, if I'm unconscious,
Blew my
right?
mind.
Right? If I'm unconscious to the situation, now all of a sudden I'm going to create tension, especially if I got vibrational tension around me. It's going to create more tension. And the energy that I typically display, I fill rooms. If I'm carrying out attention, Jolie will pick up on it, and she gets mad at me. She's not. It's not like it's my fault, but she's good feedback for me. Be careful what I say.
Sure.
She's good feedback for me, because she's like, hey, you need to control your shit. You're filling the whole house, and she's right. You're filling the whole house with what? And I'm like, whoa, okay. I'm only human, but I can be reminded, and so we check on one another. But the fact of the matter is, we need to start taking our responsibility for how we think and how we feel, which is part of the process of building resilience. And then what can we do, and focus on that, and what can we do, and compartmentalize. We can't do something, fine, but what can we do? What can we do? Where can we activate? Where can we stay on purpose? Where can we stay in our values? And we have to understand, this is the context of time, and time is another paradigm. But what ends up happening is, and so two people mentioned this to me the other day, oh, it's going to be a long winter. I'm like, shit, why would you put yourself in that situation already? It's not even here yet, and you're already deciding it's going to be long. Why would you do that to yourself?
Wow.
But our experiences of time are short or long based upon the context we apply to the experience that we're in. We also can control that as well. I'm not saying we're going to love everything about what's happening, but potentially, could we be a bit lighter about it? Could we have a little bit more ease with it? What if we used ease and grace? Could there be, hey, Hawkins talks about peace, love, these other attributes that are much higher on the scale of consciousness? What if I held that energy? I mean, I've worked with several CEOs and we've taken the paradigm of, I have to struggle to have success. I must work hard to have success. And then so, well, what if we had the same or more success and we did it with ease? What would that look like? Like, could we, like, this doesn't mean we're not going to do the work, but what makes it harder makes it easy is it's kind of up to us. Someone says, well, someone's going to punch you in the head. Well, to me, that's like, it's a great opportunity to take that energy and leverage it and utilize it to my benefit. That could be very easy. It doesn't have to be hard. I don't have to create tension with that. I can relax with it.
You know, one of the things that's coming out for me is, as you were talking, I remember making a very conscious decision years ago. So I had a very, very stressful corporate experience, you know, during my 10 years in the corporate space, very stressful. And and I realized about 5 years, I would say, into being a business owner. So I started my business in 2006, and the first business, it evolved into the corporate agent. But you know, so about 5, 6 years later, I realized, because I woke up one morning and I was so stressed about everything that I had to do that day. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if you and I had just I don't know where the thought came from, but I realized that I had decided that work was stressful. That I had tied working with stress together
Yeah.
as though they were two sides of the same sheet of paper, that they were a yin and a yang, and that those two things coexisted together. And so I was exhausted. I mean, I still get tired at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I do work long days sometimes, but the level of exhaustion that I had was so much greater because I assigned all of this stress to it by default. Like, it didn't even have to be a stressful thing. Talk about how we do that a little bit, because I think
Yeah.
high achievers tend to be real good at making those sort of associations to things where certain things have to be conflict or certain things have to
Yeah.
be scary. And then we hear, let me just add this one last piece, and then I'll hush here for a second. But I also get some, I really want you to talk a little bit more about this idea about our ability to control our emotions, because right now, one of the things I am hearing from folks is a little bit of an excuse um, around, well, I'm feeling a certain way, so I can't possibly
Yeah.
focus on this because I'm
Yeah.
feeling this way, as though our emotions own us.
Right.
And that we're, just, essentially a subordinate. I'll use that word, a subordinate to our emotions.
Yeah. Let me talk about the emotions. And for folks out there, if you want to have any comments or questions, we'll take those as well. So on the emotional front, um, you're right. If I believe my emotions, I'm a prisoner to my emotions, then I'm a prisoner to my emotions. So like that is reality. If that's my paradigm, so the first step is to realize that we can do something about it. If we don't, then it doesn't really matter. Then it's just an exercise. The second piece is that we understand that it's the pictures we create in our head or the words that we say to ourselves typically are what drive the emotional experience that we have. So if I create a picture about something I don't like, or I create a picture of, like my mom's alone. So I could pick a picture of my mom sitting alone and being lonely, right? I run that movie. Is it true or not? Regardless, I could run that movie. I could have her say something to me that she said to me yesterday, and I could play that back. And I could instantly transfer my emotions to start feeling something heavy about that. And so the first thing is to start thinking about is like, okay, well, I got to start paying attention. We cannot change what we do not notice. We cannot change what we do not notice. So the first order of business whenever I work with anyone is I need to heighten their level of self-awareness. Because if I don't, I cannot help them. I am not in their head. They are. So, which is a whole other topic. Where is the mind, and is it really in the brain anyway? Which a good argument that it's not. But regardless, so how do we run the brain? And paying attention to how we do that. So, okay, Chris, well, how do I take control of that? I really have found a better tool than meditation personally, and one that helped my clients more. So if you're out there, meditation's a great resource. I say, where do I start? I typically start people with guided meditation. If they're not working with me personally, I can, I refer people to like a Headspace, Calm. And I think the challenge with meditation, and it's worth saying in high achievers, is that they take the model of high achievement. And I had a podcast guy ask me this. He's like, okay, well, can you just, it's basically just give me the bullets, give me the steps. And so I started laying it out. And I'm like, man, you're trying to process this thing already. That's part of your problem. You're outcome driven, and you've got to knock it out of the park, or screw it, you can't do it. And it's like, dude, you just forget it, piss on it. You won't be able to, because that's not the goal. And as you transcend in meditation, Maharishi Yogi talked about, like, when you have a thought, if you resist the thought and go, oh, I'm thinking about this, and resist, you actually come out of wherever you're going in the meditation. The way through is I pay attention to it. It's a thought. There's no resistance to the thought. It's good. Thoughts are good. There's nothing wrong with a thought. And now I'm going to go back to, in TM, they teach a mantra. I'm going to go back to my mantra and let the thought go. And eventually, believe it or not, you start creating space between your thoughts. Mm-hmm. Once you start working that, it's a mind gym. Meditation is a mind gym. You say, I believe in strength training. I believe in, cardio. Well, then why wouldn't you believe in learning to control your head? Because that is, if you can't pay attention to what you're thinking and the condition, I know a consultant, and I know you probably know a lot of consultants. I'm thinking of one in particular that believes that no one's spending money now, because they've had the experience of talking to people. And in fact, they've owned it so much now, I think they really truly attract and just surround themselves with people who aren't spending money and have really good stories of why they're holding their cash. But at the same time, in this economy, companies are spending equally, if not more. So, truth. And, you and I worked with David Nagel and Dave would say, truth is absolute 100% all the time. If it's not 100% all the time, that's not truth. If you can find, it's just like any of these ideas. If you can find someone not struggling to generate the life they want, then that's evidence that it's possible. Has to be. It's just not your experience, because some part of you has chosen it not to be that way. And I think that one of, I need to struggle, I need to work hard so I can deserve success, is a big one for high achievers, that we have, sooner or later, we have to let that go. It's okay to work, but does it have to be hard? I mean, I work out, I say, I put an effort in, yes, but I'm not internally, it's like, Buddha talked about how pain is part of life. We cannot ever have a situation where we don't have pain, but suffering is optional. And the suffering piece is like my internal resistance to what that is, and how I'm going to keep making it bigger. It becomes part of our story. And in fact, the story of how life works. I mean, two of the biggest stories that I say we have is the story about who we are, I am, the two most strongest words in English language, and the story about what life's about, how it works. And all of our challenges come out of these two grandiose stories about what we believe, and all the beliefs, the paradigms, and then the experience drives with all that. So, but I would say, if you want to learn to understand your emotions, start paying attention to what you think, pay attention to how you think, pay attention to the pictures you create in your head, the movies you create in your head, and then what you're saying to yourself, and then the sensations in your body, the sensations that you would create in our neurologies, and another key piece in regards to the emotions. And say, well, I'm really mad. I say, great. I talked to someone this morning, I'm really mad. I said, great. Anger is fine, but anger is not a very great energy to hold. I mean, think about it. What do you say when someone says, well, when someone has a lot of anger, so let them cool down, let them cool off, right? How often do we say that? And the reason we say that is because anger burns And it does cool off because it requires a tremendous amount of energy. And when no one can maintain and sustain that amount of energy for a long period of time, and they will burn out and cool off because it's necessary for the neurology to do so.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You know, isn't it funny the language we use, Chris, about things? I feel like the language that we grow up with that gets handed down from generation to generation often holds so many of the universal truths in the
It does.
language. I mean, it
It
really
does.
does, right? I grew
Yeah.
up in a household where my grandmother would say certain things that I just took for granted. And through the work that I've done and that you've done, I realized that she was actually passing down old wisdom. She didn't necessarily know that she was passing
Yeah.
down that wisdom. Do you know what I mean? Like, she
Yeah.
didn't know
Yeah.
that when
Yeah.
she was always say we're very powerful manifestors in our family. I believe everybody can be. We
Yeah.
just kind of are sort of like, I was unconsciously aware, right, of being such a powerful manifester. And from the
Sure.
time I was young, she would say, in our family, you have to be careful what you wish for because it'll
Yeah.
show up tomorrow. And it did. It would literally show up tomorrow for us. And so that idea of being really clear on what you want. Let me ask you a question. Let me go back to this idea of fulfillment for a second, because we've covered some really important ground when it comes to high achievers, because you primarily work with people like this. It's sort of, it's always ironic. It's the people who are the most driven, who would most benefit from working with you, that have the
Yeah.
hardest time doing it,
Yeah.
because it requires a degree of letting go of control a little bit, and their self identity is so tied to their success, right?
Yeah.
So it's this.
Yeah.
So you've got control piece of it. You have these external motivators, which is driving them. Their identity is tied to their drive and those external motivators that they have, and
Right.
even some of the physical things that they have, right? And then they're the ones who have to somehow find, I would say, one that courage to say, you know what, I'm going to step into this and do this work more deeply with. And it is a leap of faith, because you have to believe that you're actually going to have more of what it is you actually want, even though the illusion is you're somehow giving something up, right?
Yeah.
There's that piece
Right.
of it.
Right.
And then there's the idea of redirecting where that fulfillment is actually coming from. You started
Right.
today by talking about the woman who wants the plane, the private jet,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
she's living on an
Right.
island. She has a
Right.
private jet.
Yeah.
So how does that, from like an alchemy perspective, what is the transmutation of the desire for the private plane and the mansion on the
Yeah.
island, and all the,
Yeah.
how does that change then to a
Yeah.
sense of fulfillment?
Yeah. It's a good question. So I think there all of us desire more, and more is okay as long as more is aligned with our truth and not our ego. And there's a difference between those two things. I desire traveling the world with my family. I love the experience of travel. I love what it does. I love how I feel when I do. That just, it is what it is, right? So that works for me. I like nice things. I don't necessarily like nice things because in the past I did. I like nice things because I wanted to show people that the illusion of that I had some level of success, because I had a level of insecurity. But as we become more secure with who we are and owning that, loving ourselves, having a high self-esteem, being secure with who we are, we can start saying, okay, let's level set. What really is most important to me? What really is most important to me? And what are my values? What do I really value? Now, I require that people work with me that they value themselves at the top, because if they don't, then it's going to be really difficult to get anywhere. And with that, then it's like, well, what does that mean to maintain well-being? Like, I think we all have a responsibility to have some level of well-being. How we manage stress, how we feed ourselves, all these key attributes are very important. Because if I'm not treating myself well, that's going to have an impact, and it's going to impact my fulfillment. Because if I'm going to be sick, or I'm not feeling well, or I have body issues, it's gonna impact my life experience, and I also won't be my best self for the other things in my life I value, which typically is my loving relationship with my significant other, and children, if children are in the picture. Those are usually the things that people say they value. So how much time and energy are we spending with those things and investing? And what ends up happening is we end up saying, well, I'm going to build this business so that I can take care of my family, but then at the same time, the business is taken away. But we don't realize it necessarily, but we created a good story because our ego is getting fed that the real reality is that I've created conditions in my business so that I have to be doing all these things so that I can feel significant because the business has given me that significant. And that's one of the reasons I really love working with businesses in transition and succession projects, because now I'm dealing with someone also I know that I have to help this person let that go, and not only just the business, but who they believe they are in relationship to that business also needs to be identified and reset so that we can create a life of like, hey, more is good. It's more of what is it that you want. One of my clients right now, he's doing more amazing life experiences of going hiking and going on these amazing, $18,000 hunts and things like that, because that floats his boat. And he does that because he enjoys it. And it connects with nature, and it feels good for him. And that's where I think that's great. I almost use the word should. I can't stand that word should. If we're using the word should, usually it's a social norm. You got to ask yourself, why am I doing something? Is it for my ego? Also, is it for someone else, how they might think and feel? Or is it really truly aligned with me? So as I go through my vision work that I do with my clients, the retreats that we set up, we really dive into like, let's get clear on what you really want that's aligned for you. And fulfillment will come from that place. And fulfillment, part of the recipe of fulfillment is using our gifts and talents to help other people on their journey. That's a big part of where it comes from. And people say, well, I remember you saying that, like, well, if you're out there and like, well, I don't like doing all these things in my job. Marcus Buckingham talks about the loathed it and loved it list. And what is it that you love about what you do? Are you really utilizing and taking and applying your talents to what you do? And there are some things that as business owners and entrepreneurs, we probably should have someone else do. And that's okay. And there's some things that we don't like that we probably still should do. And for some folks, it's small solopreneurs, it's usually sales, right? But then that comes back into, well, that's rejection, and that's tied to my ego. So the more we can work on our ego and loving ourselves more and owning who we are and our truth, the more fulfillment we get to have, because fulfillment comes from connecting from those places, realizing that we're here to help each other. Like, we are all here to help each other in our journey. You've helped me tremendously in my journey, Angelique. And that's what we're here for. I've leveraged your gifts and talents. They've helped me and my family. And that's what it's about. And it's from doing that from the right place. That's why we do it.
The word freedom gets talked about an awful lot, but certainly when your motivators are driven not by those external things that other people have the power to say yes or no to, whether someone buys from you, whether they book you to speak at an event, whether they take a job with your company, whatever it is, those external things you have no control over whatsoever. But as you were just talking right now, it speaks to me to the importance of freedom, because when it's you that's deciding that you're fulfilled because you're doing it for things that you can control in terms of it being in alignment with your purpose in this world and coming from a place of helping others, and you're really living in alignment with truth and universal law and integrity. It really doesn't matter what some of those external rejections are, like sales. It doesn't matter, because that's not what it's about. One of the things that you do, I want to talk about this briefly before we wrap up today. One of the things that you've, just through our work together, that has come up in our conversations is the fact that so many people go through life, Chris, with they have their grocery lists and they have their lists for Home Depot, and they might have a bucket list that's full of things like skydiving because they think they're supposed to put that on their bucket list. And they certainly have their marketing plans and they have their launch plans. And you also work with much, much bigger companies. So they have their sales plans for the year, and they have, their balance sheets and their long range strategic plans for the corporation. So you work with people at all different levels and all different sizes of companies. Everybody has a plan for everything except for their life.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that, because that's really in terms of your purpose and the way that
Yeah.
you interact with some of your clients. It's really about getting clear with what is the vision of your life and what
Right.
is the plan for your life from that vision perspective.
Right.
It's kind of ironic because it's the thing that no one has, and yet the one thing we all share in common is that this life ends.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting. And people are like, well, I can't create space to work on that. Well, okay. I guess that's how much you value your life experience. But in essence, I got a process where I go through and it builds upon itself. So it starts with health and wellness that I mentioned earlier, and then it builds. And later in the process, we get to the business, because the business drives the outcomes that you want for yourself and your family and whatever else you're trying to accomplish. It's the vehicle that does so. But within the context of these areas, we create absolute clarity in what we want, not from our truth. And then secondly, we get clear in why, that's the check-in question. Why do I want this? Why is it important? And I call people on their BS on that one. And then the third one is like, okay, well, all right, I want this. This is why. Then what do I think I believe about it in relationship to me and how the world works in my life? Because if the reason we don't have it typically is because we haven't become the person to generate it, right? Like that, we haven't become the person to generate it. So and that's the key when someone is working. That's the key. That reason why someone, I believe, should work with a coach. Why I work with coaches, because I cannot see my own blind spots. It's very, you know that about me. You point out the blind spots I have all the time, but I can't see them, and I'm okay with that. I'm not broken. But other people can't see theirs also. And so it's necessary for someone to point out our blind spot to us so we can see it. And then we can apply the strategy. And I think one thing that happens with folks who are looking to build a life by design, not by default, is right off the back, you know this, like right off the back, they say, oh, right internally, I ask the question, well, I don't know how the hell is that going to happen. I throw down my obstacle or my story right away of why something's not going to happen or how it's not going to happen, when that's not our job. That's God's job. Our job is to believe and know our dream comes from somewhere. And my friend Amber has a quote: "If it's in us, it's for us. If the dream is in us, it's for us. So if it's in us, then let's not get hung up on how. Let's just get clear on what and why and who we need to become. And then we can get into some strategy and say, well, I don't know the whole strategy. Well, there's always, I'm telling you right now, there's a great meditation. I won't have time to get into it. And if you want to email me, chris@chrisyonker.com, I'll be happy to, my team can send it to you. But there's a great meditation you go through. Actually, you can really get grounded and you ask God, what's the one thing I can do towards this? And you really plug into intuition. Decision-making does not belong in our heads. Intuition is not in our head. Fear is in our head. Fear comes from our head. So if we're making decisions, when I'm working with critical decision-making with an executive team, my first order of business is get them out of their head. I got to get them out of their head. And there's some great strategies to do that. We don't have time to get into that all today, but there's some great strategies, even to work on breath control so that I can recalibrate my nervous system. Most people out there, your parasympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. You're in fight or flight mode constantly, to the degree that you become callous to it. And to do any of this work, we got to create space You say, well, I don't have time. There isn't any space. That's a bullshit illusion that you've manufactured that is not based on any sense of reality. And the fact of the matter is, you do have the space, but you have to believe that you do.
And say more. So for folks who do want to get that meditation, I'm going to have them reach out to you. And I think that I've done that meditation that you've talked about, and it is really interesting when I get out of my body, like when I get out of my body and I connect into something bigger, then I'm able to see answers that didn't exist
Yeah.
before. So
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So so you have a lot that you put out into the world. You have a really fantastic book that I love. You also put out videos on an ongoing basis, Chris, and things
Yep.
like meditations, and you're talking about this all the time. I think there was a time in my life, actually, it's the person who I met you through, right? We were in the same room at an event together. But there was a time in my life that doing that sort of deeper inner work about consciousness and fulfillment was not a regular part of how I lived my life.
Yeah.
And now, of course, it's just part of how I approach life every day. It's kind of hard for me to even like remember the before, the before time. But this is really something that, isn't like this isn't work that we're ever done with, And I have to say, like, for me, hearing different people talk about different aspects of it has been so critical to my growth because I hear different things and I'm able to connect the dots differently. How can people I think one of the reasons that I've always resonated with you in particular is just because it's so rooted in universal law in the physical versus the sort of the spiritual side of our experience and those pieces. And you've always explained things in plain English, which I've always appreciated. How can folks tap into some of those other resources that you're putting out and the conversations that
Yeah.
you're having on an ongoing basis?
Yeah. I guess a couple things. One is website is chrisyonker.com. There are some resources there. The podcasts I've been on are all housed there, as well as some videos. And then greatestyearsofyourlife.com. No www in front of that at all. Just greatestyearsofyourlife.com. That is a URL you can go to get the vision workbook that I leverage with my clients, at least a good part of it. And those are resources that are available. And lastly, I am launching a podcast. I'm just starting to record right now, and that will be out beginning of next year. So those are all resources. And then also on the events page of my website, I'm doing an event on the 17th of November around critical decision making in business and with certainty, and utilizing some of this as a process. And that we're capping it at 200, and I think we're at 65 people right now so far. So that's available too, and that information is on my website and events.
Yeah, I think for those of you who have a chance to check that out, I highly recommend it. Especially now, we're seeing folks really getting into their head in a place of fear for making
Yeah.
decisions, falling for the illusion of lack of certainty, as though there was ever any certainty about everything, but really falling into that illusion. So I would definitely recommend that you guys check that out. And I also want to point out too, just because I know our community so well, this deep work that Chris is doing, that we've been talking about here. These are conversations that he's having with senior level executives inside of large companies as well. This is really, this is no longer, a conversation that's happening just in sort of, the
Yeah.
solo, like the solopreneur land or something. These
Yeah.
are the conversations, Chris, that are happening inside of big companies with entire
Yeah.
leadership teams who are trying to figure out all of this stuff because it impacts the consciousness of their entire company.
Yep. Yeah. So several Fortune 500 companies have had Deepak Chopra in the last 60 days. I know people who know Deepak, and for him to come in and lead meditation and talk about some of the things we're talking about today. And so, like, why would a big company do that? Why would they do that? Because they know they're waking up, that they're that the this our level of this is a wake up call. This is a great opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, for everyone to become more conscious. It's going to be more, your life experience will be better, and we'll be better humans by doing so.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't say that enough. And I'll say too, you guys, I mean, Chris has been inside of financial organizations, types of companies that you would just never in a million years would associate with doing this deep inner work. And yet this is really, I think, what's going to shape the next 100 years of humanity more than anything, Chris, is our willingness
Yeah.
to do this work and to get clear on the consciousness piece and getting in alignment with where we need to be in our lives, and with our purpose. This has been really great. You all, I have
Thank you.
known Chris now for years, and so I can't say enough amazing things about him and the work that he's been doing in the world from a really deep, meaningful place. So if you guys get a chance, definitely head to chrisyonker.com. Chris, this has been absolutely amazing, and very therapeutic today to
Yeah.
have this conversation about what's really, really important. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll be back next Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern with another great show for Lead Your Movement. And as we roll out, we'll just share with you a quick highlight reel from our recent event. Thanks to all who joined us there.